Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start a little traditionally. Ma te huruhuru ka rere ta te mai anu, ko rumataka te mawanga, ko te awa, kairangi te awa, ko au te kaiwhare matua o Rebel Business School Aotearoa. Ko taku nākau, nui te whakapai a tātou au mā te kairahi Pākehī, ko Tony Henderson-Newport. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. The interesting thing about that mihi is that it starts with adorn the bird with feathers so it may fly, which is the most beautiful Maori saying. You could almost call it a proverb. My mountain is Rumataka, my river, the Hutt River, although interestingly, my early years were in Te Tahi Bay, and I'm the Chief Kiwi at Rebel Business School Aotearoa. However, business is my passion and my heart, and you got my name, hopefully. People just call me Tony. And I'm just going to test this clicker. Oh, there we go. I didn't even touch it. That was pretty cool. However, I'm just going to go see if it is actually working. Now, I might just cue you. Yep, cool. What I'd love us to do, this is going to be the subject of our korero this morning. And what I'd like you to do is to read this with me. And I'll just cue you, and then we'll launch into what we're going to talk about today. So, everyone, please. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. And now that's a really interesting 3 verses to unpack, and I'm sure that all of you will have heard and know well the first one. Can we click through? And again, and again. Thank you. The interesting thing, though, is who is Jeremiah? And as you can see from the screen here, that was a long time ago, circa 650 to 570 BCE. He was also authored, you could argue, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and there might have been more than one book of Kings, which means that he authored 4 books, not 3. And he was obviously supported in that process, but he was believed to have been around 20 when he was called prophecy. And isn't that interesting? What we don't know is what we don't know, and we don't know where the ripples will go. So I'm going to take you to, if you can take that away, that'd be great. Oh, I won't need this, right? Nothing happening from, oh, hang on, wait. There we go. Cool. So the ripple effect. So I thought what I'd do is litter some interesting things that have been in my lifetime that actually talk about a ripple, because when a ripple happens, we never see where it starts. We only really see the effect of a ripple when we look back. And when we had the video just before, you'll recall that they talked about a song that they suggested was written, and now it's deeply entrenched in their church. But that was years later, and I know Mark said in that video that that was a real obvious ripple. What you can see on the screen here is 2004 was when Amy and Joe came to live in our house in England, in the UK, and they were 5, 6 at the time. Amy's in the audience, actually. One of my great things that God gifted me was the chance to be a dad again. And these pictures are a litany of stories about coming back to New Zealand and bringing Amy and Joe back with me. And I spent 7 years in the UK as a solo dad, so I really understand what it's like to be a solo parent. Holding down a job, getting the kids to school, rinse and repeat every day, and yet still finding time for holidays. And there's a continuation of the story a little bit later. But it's only when I look back that I see God's presence in the heart of it. And so many times in that journey, my two children, Amy and Joe has deep ADHD. And what was interesting is all the way through his story, if you like, his lifetime, there were times when it was so challenging to raise a child who has challenges. And honestly, I can't count the number of times when church turned up in all kinds of different ways to support Joe's still being around and having a future in Aotearoa, New Zealand. But my point about the ripple is it's only when we look back. Next slide, please. So, verse 11, can anybody tell me where this verse ranks in the most popular verses on the planet? This is a participation session. Anybody? Top five, exactly right. I had another look to check yesterday, it was number 4. But 12 and 13, which we're also going to unpack, are not really on the list. And yet, why would Jeremiah give 12 and 13 as follow-on to 11? And do we ever ask ourselves that? It's interesting for me that, as you can see here, this is broken into 3 parts. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. So that's a really clear statement. He knows the plans that he has for each of us. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. So that's also pretty clear. It's not like he's saying, you know, the stuff that happens, and quite often it might be that it's not our fault, but it's part of the plan. What are we meant to learn from it? And that's not to harm us, it's to grow us. And then plans to give you hope in a future. And yet, do we really believe that? You can see here, I've put on the slide, believe. Because the interesting thing for me is, and in my work, in my mahi, we come across doubt and self-doubt a lot. But do we doubt the Lord? Do we doubt that he has a plan for us? Do we doubt that he wants us to prosper? Do we doubt that he wants to give us a hope and a future? And so part of today's chat is to ask you to also reflect on this. Because not only does he open every door that you need, but we can get in his way. Next slide, please. Thank you. It's a pretty big world out there, right? But if you look at New Zealand, in the bottom right-hand corner, we make an impact on the global stage. And I lived overseas for a long time, and I know how we are respected in other countries. So can anybody in this participation session tell me where on the ranking of least corrupt countries in the world we rank? Number 1 or 2. Any given year, we are the least corrupt nation on the planet. So the question is, when I grew up, I used to call this place God Zone because that was a term. We're in God Zone. I still feel that. I still believe that. There's something about this land, something about the people that are in this land that resonates with other countries about what we're prepared to do that so many countries are not. How is it that we are the least corrupt nation on the planet when we are so small? So the interesting thing is, around this journey, can anybody tell me how many countries are registered with the United Nations at any one time at the moment in the world? Anybody? No guesses? Oh, I know the answer, obviously. So 193, and there's 2 that are not member states of the United Nations, but they're member states. and one is the Holy See, and the other one is Palestine. Now, really interesting. Now, here's a question you must know the answer to. How many countries does the Salvation Army currently work in? I'm loving this competition, by the way. I should be handing out chocolates. 60? 135. The chocolate fish goes down here. And why didn't... Next slide, please. Back one. Listen to next one, and then we should have unpacking and next. Yay. Wait, where did 12 go? You're going the wrong way. Yay. That means we're... Okay, scrub it. I've done a lot of facilitations, and sometimes you look at the screen and you go... can you go back to Jeremiah 29:11? That'll do. The thing is that if he knows the plans, and he's going to call us, and then you will call on me. Can you go to that slide, please? Normally I have a lot more control. Okay, leave it there. Then you will call on me, come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. Those are his words to us. The question is, do we call on him? Do we go and pray to him? And then do we let him listen? So part of the reflection in the korero that we're having today is a bit challenging, because I want actually you to settle back and go, do I get in his way? Because these three verses are really relevant to you. And they're relevant in a completely different way. And that is that the ripple that you create, quite often you never see the end to. And the ripple that someone else starts, you never see. But in the time of your challenge or the time of your success, do you call on him? Next slide. I'm praying, yes. And then he says, and I think this is almost the most important part of these three verses, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Does he ask us to do it with a half heart? Does he ask us to pray to him in a way that means that we're not bringing everything to the table? I don't know if everybody's watched the All Blacks South Africa game yet, but from both teams there was a lot of blood on the field. The tanks were pretty empty when they got to the end of that game. But do we do that ourselves? When we're seeking the Lord, do we leave everything on the table? Do we really believe that he's going to be there for us? Because I think that quite often when our plans don't work as we think, either as part of his plan or we're getting in his way, our own doubt causes an inability for him to shift an open door or allow him to shut a door that should be shut. And so part of the reflection that I want you to take away today is, where do you sit on, I will seek you with all my heart? It's pretty easy, right, to say, yeah, I'm there. Lord, you know I'm there. And then 2 minutes later, we're in a korero with somebody else in another place, but we're not living his word. We're not demonstrating that we are part of his kingdom. We're not showing up it's okay for us to be half of everything he needs. But that's not what he's asking. Now, if you tie that together with what he said what the prophet said in 11, I have plans for you, and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. So really interesting for me is if I have plans, how deeply embedded am I in actually showing up and making those forward steps? Or do I doubt myself, and through that do I doubt him? Really interesting, right? So that, I keep coming back to, do we believe? Next slide, please. Now, if we jump forward a few centuries, this is Matthew, and this is what he said: ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. Now, if you think about all the decades that define the time between Jeremiah and Matthew and Christ's existence on this planet, there's a real symmetry between what Matthew is saying and what Jeremiah said. Ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. And yet, do we really believe that's true? I mean, honestly, if you just shut your eyes for 1 second and say, am I 100% on the scale of I'm all in? Or are there times during the week when we're distracted? How do we handle the kids? Those angry drivers on the road? Where are we in that synergy? If we're in business or an employee, where are we on the gateway to his word, his kingdom, the hopes and dreams that he has for you? Next slide. As you can see, right in the middle of between belief and the saying is self-sabotage. And I don't know whether any of you have ever explored that, but it comes up in so many ways. Anybody guess my height apart from my daughter? I'm 5'4", and yet I've still played basketball, although I never jump in the middle. I never do slam dunks, but I'm pretty hungry around point guard because I have a low centre of gravity. And I've played loads of sport and football in different parts of the world. My height has never really been the issue. It's just my attitude to the game. And that's what God asks of all of us. What is it that we can bring to the game? What is it that how you make self-sabotage disappear is you just totally believe in him. And then you make the steps forward based on your belief in him. It's not rocket science. It's just where he sits. So it's a big wide world out there, and I want to talk about another ripple. And I guess in some ways it's a little bit of a testimony. In February 2014, I got asked by Vodafone UK if I was interested in a role in Vodafone New Zealand. And Vodafone New Zealand brought me back here for some interviews. And about 4 weeks before I was due to fly, I had a motorbike accident in the UK. Amy will remember it well. I had Joe, my other boy, on the back, and it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. At 4 o'clock in this massive retail park in Newbury, Berkshire, everything shut because that's what they did on Sunday, except the cafe, where I could get pretty decent coffee until 5 o'clock. So by 5 o'clock, most of the traffic had gone. Joe climbed on the back. We had a 5-minute journey home. And as I was going around one of the corners, I hit some black ice and the rear of the wheel went out. I did the most natural thing that I thought would work was I put my foot down to arrest it. My friend Michael is in the audience and he'll most probably tell you if you've got a pillion passenger on the back, don't try and put your foot down to correct the slide because the weight's all wrong. And so I ended up doing a slide right across the road, but thank you, Lord, there was no traffic because everything had shut and everybody had gone home. But this is where the story gets really interesting. I had, my leg was pinned under the bike. I've got steel pins in here now. It doesn't stop me playing sport, yay. But the interesting thing was, at the point where the accident happened, 3 of my friends, not all of them knew each other, were actually where the accident happened. And they were not there together. And then I remember my son Joe got off the bike. He was okay. The bike was going to need a little bit of a repair, but not much. But my leg was still pinned under there. And I had one of my friends talking to Joe and making sure he was okay. Another of my friends was ringing for an ambulance. And another of my friends was talking to me. The one who got off from the ambulance was then ringing my other son, David, who lived in the UK with us, to let him know. So at some way, shape or form, the bike had to get home. How on earth did 3 people that I know independently end up at the point where the accident happened? How do you get a ripple like that? What was that meant to say to me and my son Joe about the fact that we were both still alive? That the time of the accident happened when there was no other traffic on the road, but the very point where I needed help, 3 people who knew me just happened to be there. Like, what's the ratio of coincidence? If there's any mathematicians in the room, that is not a participation question. The interesting thing is that was 2014. I did get back to New Zealand for the interview. Ultimately, Vodafone brought me back, and I stayed with them for a year before I cut loose to do my other stuff. The interesting thing is that I wouldn't be on this stage right now having a story to tell about another Kiwi having an adventure overseas if it weren't for the Lord just keeping an eye on things. Am I thankful every day? 100%. Am I thankful every day that I have my son and daughter back here? Does anybody know the true meaning of whānau from Maori culture? Participation question? Somebody must know what whānau is, right? What is it?
Where you have an extra big family.
You have an extra big family. So God brought Amy and Joe through adoption to our household in 2004. And here we are in 2022, and my daughter and granddaughter are here. Ripple effect, right? Next slide, please. So I want to create a ripple, because part of this is, do we really understand the true effect of a ripple? And I don't think we do. So who's somebody who's never seen me before in the audience? This is a participation question.
Maybe.
Right. Can I give you this? And then what I want you to do is to find somebody else in the audience that you've never met before and give it to them. Now I'd like you to find somebody else that you don't know and give it to them. I know everybody, he said. Nice try, Batman. And now I'd like you to find somebody else that you don't know and give it to them. Last time, somebody else, whoever gets it now. Open it up. This is finders keepers, by the way. $100. It's a pay it forward, right? So we didn't know where it was going to land. That is what's happening with the self-denial appeal. Don't feel bad. You are part of the gifting, part of the journey, and part of passing it on, because that's what we don't see. And when the ripple starts, we just don't see where it's going to end. We have no idea. But next Sunday, what are we going to be called to do is to find a little bit out of our coffers that might make a difference somewhere in the big wide world. One of those 135 countries. So I have 2 of my team work in Ukraine, and they've been working with us for 5 years and now all the way through a war. You know, it's like, for me, I honour them every day. But for you and me, that self-denial will make a difference somewhere. We just don't know where it's going to land. We don't know what it's going to be used for, and we don't know how we will be part of that journey. The interesting thing for us is that we are, each of us, all part of somebody else's ripple. You know, they are giving us stuff. Hey, is this a good church? Amen. Sorry, I can't hear. Yes. Come on, guys. Is this a good church? All right, now we're starting to talk. Look, that's the vibe that you have to bring to the self-denial appeal. 100%. Where's our music team? Is this a good cue? The point I want to make is that we get a chance in a minute to think about where we are on the journey of self-denial. Where are we going to be in 5 years' time? But where will the difference that we make through our donation into the self-denial appeal, where will that land in 5 years' time? You know, what is the ripple? And I'm looking around the room. I see Michael. I see my friend Duncan over the back there, and I think about how much this church has given to me. Salvation Army Tawa, Salvation Army Wellington, Salvation Army here. You know, our heart is more than what we just wear. You know, we should be wearing the kingdom of God on our sleeve every day. And what can we do with that? You know, what does that look like now? Because where I want to take us next is into just a short time of personal reflection. I want you to look back from where you are now for the grace that God's given you now. And I want you to look back all the way to your childhood if need be. And think about those times when the Lord has been beside you, but where other people have contributed their piece to your story, where you've been part of their ripple. And quite often we don't take the time to do that. And you can see on the slide here, this is all about your personal reflection. So just for a minute or two, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to picture yourself as you were at whatever point in time you want to go to. Because this is a moment where the true value of God having a plan for you, having a purpose for you, is where you can see more when you look back. He's not asking you necessarily to see where you are in 5 years' time, but feel His presence in the times when He's been there for you, when He's lifted you up, when He's carried you, where He's sent people to minister to you. This is the opportunity, because of those reflections, that you get a chance to make a difference in the life of someone else. Somewhere on the planet, there will be a ripple that comes from you, and it will be felt by somebody else. But the joy in the heart of our Lord Jesus Christ, of our God, is actually in the gifts and grace He's already given us and is yet to give us. Because if we're still alive, we're still working to His plan. And no matter how many times I ask Him to be clear, He keeps saying, keep going. Your commitment to the self-denial appeal is something that will be personal to you. The call to action is to do something. No matter how small, a life will be changed because of it. because that small piece of sacrifice is part of his plan. Whatever he needs to do with that money, whatever he needs to do with that resource, with that person, it's in his hands. I want you to believe in that. I want you to trust that and to know that more than anything else, he loves you more than anything else. A good time to open your eyes before the music team really kicks into some cool stuff. It's really like to thank you for the opportunity that I've had to talk here this morning, and just to think about where your hope and your future is, because God has you in the palm of his hand.